You're muted on yours, right?
Oh, I'm not logged
Okay,
in.
you're not on the Zoom. Okay.
I can leave.
Just gonna sit over here.
You want to sit up in front of everyone?
Not really. Not really.
Did you make a
I feel
account for the Arlo?
I did.
Okay, got it. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Jessica Shea, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker here at Memphis, Tennessee. I'm the founder of a practice called Forward Counseling. We've been an outpatient practice in business since around 2013, and I have a few other projects. One is I'm the founder of Memphis Psychedelic Society, and we meet monthly and talk about research in the field of psychedelic medicine. So if that's something you're interested in, give us a follow on Facebook. I'm also the founder of Memphis Mushroom Festival. Memphis Mushroom Festival is a festival that explores the intersection of health, mental health, and nature. So there will be topics about psychedelics. So that's this May. So I encourage you guys, if you like the topic today, all of the things I just listed, or you can find them on Facebook. You can like and follow the page, and then you'll get invited to the events. Most of those projects have monthly events, meetings, classes, things like that. So there's definitely a lot more information. This slideshow also is very dense. I apologize. There's hardly no photos. It's all data. So I will send you guys the link to the slideshow and also the PDF version. Most of the research that I talk about is in the slides if you want to look back over it. But I'm just going to start with the very, very basics. This is going to be a two-part class. I'm going to start with the basics and today talk a little bit about psilocybin. And then next time talk about 2 or 3 other psychedelic medications. And we'll go ahead and get started. May give a little bit of time at the end for questions. So if you have questions, just jot them down or jot them in the chat and we will leave them at the end. Leave time at the end for questions. So I just want to start out with what is psychedelic? What is psychedelic medicine? And most of us know what psychosis is. So I think we have somewhat of an idea of a psychedelic medicine. But a psychedelic drug includes a range of substances with varying psychopharmacological profiles, and they all affect the conscious experience. They produce changes in perception, mood, cognitive processes. They alter someone's thinking, sense of time, and emotions. They often cause hallucinations, which is why it's similar to a psychosis. Some of these substances occur naturally. A lot of them are related to fungi and plants, and then others are made in labs. So we're just going to do a little broad overview of all of them real quick. Hallucinogens in this class of drugs work by stimulating, suppressing, or modulating activity of various neurotransmitters in your brain. The specific systems that are affected have to do with the substance. How does psychedelic medicine work? Psychedelic medicine works, different substances work in different ways. We mainly think it affects your 5-HT2 receptors, and we also think it acts on your serotonin. There have been brain scans done of people while on hallucinogens, and it actually seems to decrease the activity in certain parts, but it allows connections in parts that may not typically connect. Psychedelic drugs, all of them have an effect on the conscious experience. Some of the psychedelic drugs that you guys may have heard of, I've listed below: ketamine, esketamine, psilocybin, MDMA, it's also called ecstasy, LSD, lysergic acid, PCP, iboga, or the liquid substance it's made from iboga that's called ibogaine, cannabinoids, which is marijuana, we all know what that is, ayahuasca, which is a brew made of DMT, and then 5-MeO-DMT, which is the frog version, and then mescaline, which comes from a cactus. So a lot of these are actually natural. They're plant medicines. They are derived from either the plant itself or a fungus that grows on a plant. So, now I'm going to talk a little bit about psilocybin. So back on this list, some of these psychedelic medications are currently being researched as treatments for mental health symptoms. These substances are illegal. I'm going to discuss that a little later. But because of the mental health crisis, I believe it's because of the veteran mental health crisis, there is a real push to get research done on mental health disorders. And so even though these drugs are illegal, there have been permits allowed for research to be done. And there are highly reputable institutions across US and also in Europe that are doing research on some of these substances. There's also research that was done before these substances became federally illegal. So overall, there is a heavy body of research on some of these substances. I will discuss that, and the one I'm going to go into today is psilocybin. Psilocybin, you guys might have heard of as magic mushrooms. Psilocybin is the psychoactive substance in psychedelic mushrooms. It is a powerful hallucinogen. It is not recommended for some clients. It is not recommended for those with a history of psychosis, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia. And it is federally illegal and a Schedule I substance. And currently, there are 439 medications that interact with psilocybin. Most medications are also natural, believe it or not. A lot of medications are also plant-derived. Even plant-derived medications can interact with other medications. So the research studies that I'm going to show you guys in a little while talk about that, and there's a lot of rule outs for people. So there are 200 species of mushrooms that grow in the United States and the rest of the world that contain psilocybin. It gives you visual, euphoric, and mental hallucinations, changes in perception, a distorted sense of time, and perceived spiritual experiences. The most common thing reported in research on psilocybin is that clients report they had a spiritual awakening. And I love hearing that they told scientists they had a spiritual awakening, because I just wonder how those scientists exactly quantified that. But anyway, what part of the brain does psilocybin affect? Psilocybin affects the colostrum. That's one part that we know. We don't really know a lot how these work or why. The process of taking these medications is also something that is very different for mental health treatment. And it's almost like a planned psychotic trip, but much relief can come from this. So it also can affect the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is your executive functioning. So what are the effects of ingesting psilocybin? Altered state of consciousness, nausea, decreased appetite, increased heart rate and blood pressure, difficulty moving and talking, symptoms understood by Western medicine as psychosis, feeling emotions more intensely, visual hallucinations, recalling memories, observing memories, overcoming traumatic memories, finding beauty in sentimental memories, going deeply into thought, being able to observe thoughts, feelings, and solve problems, mindfulness. A bad trip is usually someone feeling emotions that society deems negative. From the therapeutic perspective, exposure to any emotion is a growth process. Feeling connected to others in the environment, and then a spiritual awakening. What are the post-psilocybin results? This is how people report feeling after treatment. You guys will see a little later that these medications are showing effectiveness at treating certain things that we've considered really hard to treat. In most cases, they're twice as effective, and the treatment is lasting. So these are some of the post-psilocybin treatment results. The protocols have different lengths of treatment and different dosing frequencies. So I think the average is 3 doses. Some of these post psilocybin results happen immediately after the first dose, but some of these are reported after all 3 doses. So I just included them all here. So what clients report is having an increased ability to identify and manage emotions, having increased distress tolerance, decreased symptoms of depression, decreased suicidality, reduced amygdala response for at least 1 month, increase in feeling confident to solve problems, increase in problem-solving ability, reduction in anxiety, also reduction in OCD symptoms, recalling memories, overcoming traumatic memories, increase in ability to be mindful, increase a feeling of connection to others, feeling as if they have had a spiritual awakening, and finding meaning in life. That's what it's the spiritual awakening is them having something that is a deeply personal and profound experience to them. Also, there's some maybe negative side effects. I don't know. Difficulty with superficial topics. Sometimes people report feeling emotional growth and maybe growing a little past the people around them. Increased awareness, sensory perception, and empathy. Release of addictive habits. Psilocybin is being used to treat cocaine addiction at University of Alabama. It's also being used to treat alcoholism and nicotine addiction. Johns Hopkins is working on it for nicotine addiction. So these addictive processes have sort of fallen away for some clients through this. Knowing or understanding without verbal communication. You want to call that intuition, trusting your gut, whatever you want to call that. Yale scientists have found that a single dose of psilocybin given to mice induces a rapid and long-lasting increase in connection between neurons in the medial frontal cortex, an area of the brain known to be involved in control and decision making. So pretty impressive results. And if you guys are psychotherapists, you know that these are often our goals in psychotherapy. And in psychotherapy, length of treatment for certain interventions is up to 7 years. So these length of treatments are 1 year or less typically. Even with the 3 doses, the entire length of treatment is much, much more rapid. I did a year-long internship at the VA, and we had a 6-week inpatient PTSD program. And that was just the part of the treatment. But if I would have, if there could have been a message to those veterans, hey, you'll be better in a year, that would have been a game changer. And that's what these results are showing, is that in 1 year, clients are having these symptoms, this much reduction in symptoms and these positive symptoms, that it's not only is it treating things that are hard to treat, it's treating it quicker, and the results are lasting. So I'm finding it as a miracle, honestly, the things I've seen from it. Okay, so the history of psilocybin. Psilocybin has been around on art since the history of art. We have found around the globe images of psilocybin mushrooms in all sorts of paintings. Because of this, we believe that psychedelic mushroom use predates recorded history. In recorded history, there are stories of potions from all over the globe as well. In Greece, there was, I believe it's chitin or something. I can't remember what the potion's called, but there's a story of this potion that you take and it's part of ceremony. So you kind of hear these stories from around the globe of people using potions to alter their consciousness. Terence McKenna, who's a controversial but really cool American ethnobotanist, he believes that eating psychedelic mushrooms is part of the way we evolved intellectually. He calls it the stoned ape theory. He believes that our prehistoric selves were sitting around eating mushrooms and gaining consciousness and gaining neural connections. And because of that, we became, a more evolved type of creature. We have usually seen psilocybin and the psychedelic mushrooms as part of ceremonial proceedings. And indigenous peoples have stories across the globe as well of using these as medicine. So the way psilocybin got to America is a pretty interesting story. There was this guy named R. Gordon Wasson, and he was a mushroom enthusiast. Him and his wife loved mushrooms. They also were pretty wealthy. He was an executive, he was a bank executive, and this was 1957. He was doing international travel. He did international travel to go forage for mushrooms. And so somehow he found out about mushrooms in Mexico, and that shamans use mushrooms in Mexico. He went down there, and the story is that he lied to a shaman, Mary Sabina was her name, that he lied to her and said he needed help. I think he said he had lost something. And part of what she did to help people was a psychedelic mushroom ceremony. So he went through the ceremony with her, and there's different stories of if he took it or not. The story doesn't make sense if he didn't take them, but I think he did report that he didn't because it's illegal. I don't know. Anywho, he came back to America and told people about it, and it was in Time magazine. So people started traveling down to Mexico in droves to go visit Mary Sabina. And I'm talking, actually, her name is Maria Sabina. Sorry about that. Maria Sabina. I'm talking about people like the Beatles and Timothy Leary, like Yale professors, and people who were kind of on the fringes of the political movements that were going on at the time. They went down to visit Mexico and have this experience. Now, it did not go well for Maria. It was terrible because her town was flooded with demanding white men. And it didn't go well for her. The community really, from what I understand, ended up rejecting her because she brought all of this chaos to their area. So anyway, I said Time magazine, it was a Life magazine. Sorry about that. So Harvard University started research shortly thereafter. One of the Harvard guys had gone down to Mexico, tried it, came back, started some research. And then we have the late 60s and the war on drugs start. So there was research going on, but it was abruptly halted. So I want to also highlight that in early Christianity, there are images that are Christian images that also contain psychedelic mushrooms. We know that church fathers indulged in entheogens, plant medicines. So I just thought that was an interesting. There are some pretty wild philosophies about this in particular. I'm not going to repeat them because you guys are in a university and probably don't want theories like that. But anyway, it's something interesting to think about. All right, this is pictures of Maria Sabina. She used psilocybin as part of her healing rituals. They called it Velada. All right, so there are two established protocols for psilocybin. One is a heroic dose, and that is typically what you see in most of the research these days. There's research going on to treat death anxiety, OCD, cocaine use, cigarette use. Can't remember what else with the current research, but most of those are going with the heroic dose. Heroic dose is 5 to 7 grams of magic mushrooms taken up to 3 times with space in between to integrate the experience. The set and setting need to be considered. If you guys are interested, the Johns Hopkins Psychedelic Lab has great photos on their site of how their lab is set up. It's set up more like a den with kind of like a chair that lays back. There's typically a medical professional in there, monitor heart rate, things like that. There's a psychotherapist in there, and they're staying with the client the whole day. And this is a 4 to 8 hour process, by the way. But it will be cool to get the scene of the picture. The client is laying back in sort of a reclining chair. They have headphones on. They have pre-selected the sounds or the music that they want to go with their trip. They have done some prep work ahead of time. That's what I mean by set and setting. Perception will be altered. So the trip doula is recommended. They never leave the person unattended. The person is never alone on this. They're typically, from what I understand, with 2 humans at a time. And I've even seen some protocols that had 3 people in the room, a physician, a therapist, and a medical professional monitoring heart rate and blood pressure. So this is not cheap. This is not accessible. This is not available right now. I'm going to talk a little bit in a few slides about how to get this treatment, but I want you to understand that part of my role in bringing this information to you guys is also to advocate for a way to make this equitable for all people who need it. Because right now, the Johns Hopkins programs, there are ways to get into the research programs, but when this is out in the market for a paying intervention, it will be thousands of dollars. And if you just think about the length of time, the substance, the number of humans in the room, a nurse or a CNA, someone who's qualified, plus a therapist for that whole day, most of us, I don't know what y'all are charging, 100, 125 an hour. If that's an 8-hour day, that's $1,000 just for the therapist. So these medications, while they're effective and while they work and they're fast, at the moment, they're really hard to access. Okay, so may experience strong emotions at the heroic dose. Heroic dose is shown to be effective for decreasing death anxiety, having a spiritual experience, loosening of addiction, changing of habits, resolving grief, exploring subconscious, processing trauma, increasing empathy. There is an experiment right now where they are using this to treat narcissistic personality disorder. And you know how they're trying to get it to work? I think it's the increasing the empathy part of it. Anyway, the other protocol that has been around forever, and one of the doctors that started researching this actually started researching it in the 60s. His name is Dr. James Fadiman. He's a Stanford psychologist, and he's a big fan of the microdose protocol. Microdosing is a very tiny dose, a subperceptual dose that's taken every 4 days. It is, I said third day, every 3rd to 4th day. Some people have different. You can't take it more than any more frequently than every 3 days or it won't work. Okay, so the protocol for this is to take a microdose every 3 to 4 days for 10 weeks and just do your activities as you normally would. This is shown to be effective for curing cluster headaches, improving creativity, improving focus. Some people say it's like a natural ADHD medication, having more physical energy, improving productivity, reducing depression, reducing ADHD symptoms. Microdosing is part of corporate company culture at some companies. I go to a tech conference in California and I get to meet a lot of other tech folks. And I met the execs from Uber, and it's part of their culture to microdose. There is the idea in there's an idea that it helps productivity and it's a safe and natural kind of thing. Also, there are areas who have decriminalized plant medicine. So if you have your business in that city, it's not like anyone's going to get arrested for it. That's not the case here. All right. So recreational dose is somewhere between micro and heroic dose. I'm telling you guys this because you guys are probably going to have clients who say to you, I'm going to do mushrooms. And what they're doing is not what is in the research studies. The research studies are heroic dose. A heroic dose is not something you can take and go to a concert. A recreational dose is somewhere between 1 to 3 grams. And that's what teenagers do at Bonnaroo or, like Grateful Dead concerts, whatever. That makes people laugh hysterically and have a good time. I'm sure that is therapeutic. I actually believe that is also therapeutic to have such a good time. However, that dose is not really researched. And it's typically, more of what people just do for fun. All right, now I also want to talk about something that is common when any substances are involved. And even though this substance is limited to right now research, this has still been an issue. Whenever anyone is given medication that affects their ability to perceive their consciousness in such a way, it can invite people who are perpetrators to come to this field. So as part of what I want you guys to understand is the client is going to be in an extremely vulnerable position. They are vulnerable to suggestion. They are vulnerable to sexual suggestion. And you want to make sure that any guide, any research you do with anyone, any place you send someone is reputable. There was a situation at a university in the South where someone has made allegations against the research doctor that he actually, while young women were under the influence of psilocybin as part of his research, he was allegedly doing sexually inappropriate things to them. Now, this has not been found. There's not a case. The case hasn't been decided, so I can't say for sure if this happened or not, but you do hear about this. You also hear about this as part of the tourism world. There's travel, there's tourism to get this treatment, and you do hear of women and female presenting people getting sexually assaulted. Also, as I said, people can be extremely cooperative with with suggestions. So you want to make sure that any place you send someone is reputable, and you can check that online. You can check on Reddit. Reddit has a bunch of great forums. Okay. What conditions has it been shown effective at treating death anxiety, substance use, alcohol use, cocaine use, nicotine use, major depressive disorder and suicidality, anxiety disorders including OCD, cluster headaches, migraines, and PTSD. As I said, also, there's a current study for treating narcissism. What are the outcomes? So, with regard to major depressive disorder and suicidality, Johns Hopkins published results found that 71% of patients experienced a clinically significant response, and 54% met the criteria for total remission of depression. Okay. Depression is curable, guys, but some of the interventions take years to cure depression. Psychoactive medication, from what I understand, is SSRIs around 33% effective. So this is looking really good with major depressive disorder. Okay, anxiety disorders. 6 months after the experience, 80% of the Johns Hopkins participants showed significant decreases in symptoms of depression and anxiety. And NYU found that between 60 and 80% of its participants had similarly reduced anxiety and anxiety and depression 6.5 months after a single psychedelic trip. So one psychedelic trip led to 6.5 months of anxiety relief. What do y'all think about that? That's pretty amazing. PTSD. PTSD, I think, did I cut that off? Oh, it cut off. So PTSD, I can't remember, but it was 60 to 70% of the people who participated in the Johns Hopkins study had remission of PTSD symptoms. So my slide wasn't big enough to have everything. Sorry about that. So, okay, this is fantastic and great, right? Why can't we have it now? Why can't it be available? Yeah, because it's federally illegal. The federal government in the 60s deemed this drug Schedule 1, which means that they decided it has no medical benefit and therefore has no reason for anyone to possess it. You also can't produce it, manufacture it, blah, blah, blah. So the way you combat that is you got to have research to take to the government to say, hey, look at this research. It actually is effective. So that's what's going on now, is there's a ton of research going on. There's a company, a not-for-profit called the Hefter Institute, which has been funding psychedelic research for many, many years. The founder of that is a Purdue graduate. He's a pharmacist, I believe. Dr. Nichols, Dr. David Nichols is his name. And the research is being used right now to decriminalize this in parts of the US. So right now, there have been cities that have decriminalized either plant medicine Oh, can y'all hear me now? Kick me out. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, let me share my screen again. Okay, I'm gonna start with this slide because I know y'all cut off and I don't know where it stopped. Okay, so how can you guys get this treatment, or how can your clients get this treatment? They can seek treatment and travel to a place where the is they can seek out local church offer psilocybin as part of their religious sacraments. There are these churches in the U.S. They can grow their own. The spores are legal to order, but it is illegal once they become mushrooms. They can also forage for these mushrooms. They grow wild in this area: Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Florida, the whole area. Okay, traveling for treatment. There are luxury resorts across the globe that offer psilocybin experiences. There's Silo Wellness in Montego Bay, Soltara Healing in Costa Rica. There's the Journeyman Collective. There's also one in Costa Rica. Can't think of the name, sorry. All right, now your clients can also look and see if they can participate in a research clinical trial. All of these universities are doing current research on psychedelics and accept applicants. You can go usually online and look at the criteria for the applicants, but pretty reputable universities. The Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic Research is probably doing the most research, and it's very well funded and beautiful and amazing. U.S. churches. So this is a list of churches in the U.S. Churches are allowed, if you're part of a church that has this practice as the religious sacraments, they are allowed to do that. Sometimes you have to join the church to be a part of it. But once again, you do want to look on Reddit before anybody goes to any of these churches because of what I talked about being victimized. You will want to look for the reviews. There was a church in Florida that had a death. You just want to look up where you go. Some of these people have good intentions and some don't. But they got approved as a church, so they're able to do it. See all these? There's a bunch of them. People grow their own spores. People grow their own. As I said, the spores are legal. If you're a pretty law-abiding person and you don't break the law doing stuff and you grow some mushrooms at home, you're still breaking the law. I can't say you get in trouble. If you get busted, you would. The spores you will not get in trouble for, but once they become mushrooms, that's when it becomes illegal. So keep that in mind. There are people who forage for them. This is what they look like. They grow around here. They grow on biodegradable, decomposing things. They grow on horse manure, deer manure, cow manure, decaying mulch, compoundy stuff. I found them at Shelby Forest before. I've also found them in Mississippi before. Now, there are companies just gearing up to sell this stuff to you guys. These are all the publicly traded companies in the psychedelic space. Many of them do not have a product yet. They're doing research, they're researching stuff. Some of these
She is messaging me and trying to rejoin.
Okay, sorry, I don't know why it keeps kicking me off. Let me get my screen back on. Okay, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. Okay, hopefully this will not boot me off. Okay, so the companies, all of these companies are gearing up to sell you guys psilocybin. They are creating medications and products from the microdose level all the way up to the heroic dose level. These were just the ones. Now this list is 6 months old. There's new companies in the space every time I turn around. All of these companies are working to create medications out of psilocybin. Some of them are even working to take components of the psilocybin out and make medications, if that makes sense. They're trying to take out the whole psychedelic part of it. They're trying to remove the hallucinogenic, the perception change. They're trying to remove that, but also keep some parts of it. One thing, it has a side effect of suppressing appetite. So they're trying to see what part suppresses the appetite and extract that and turn it into a diet drug. And that company, I believe that's Compass Pathways, that is invested by Tim Ferriss. If you guys know Tim Ferriss, he has that podcast and 4-Hour Work Week. He's pretty popular. He's heavily invested in that. So you can also invest, if you invest money in the Canadian Stock Exchange. These companies are traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. They cannot trade on the American Stock Exchange because it's not legal here. But you can get on the Canadian Stock Exchange and purchase stock in some of these if you're interested. And they are predicted, the market, anyway, they're predicted to go up. I'm not a financial advisor. I need to tell you all that. So legal reform, as of right now, as I said, this is a Schedule I drug, which makes it really hard to research and really hard to get access to, except through universities with very limited and very strict research criteria. So right now, there are different states working to decriminalize this at a state level. Federally, we're 10 years, 20 years into this marijuana fight, and it's still not federally legal. Right now, though, there is currently more research in the area of psilocybin than there is marijuana. So the advocates for psilocybin are saying it probably will happen faster because there's way more research. There's been research for a much longer period of time, and right now there's a ton of universities getting in on the research. So the hope is in the next 2 years that we'll see some shift federally where this is allowed, at least in therapeutic settings. But as of right now, in areas where this has been decriminalized, there are also already people setting up therapeutic settings. It's kind of, to me, like a gray area. I don't know if I would do it. I don't know, but no one's enforcing the rules in places like Portland. And so you can look up and you can find retreats in Portland that are offering this. Anyway, the DEA has also agreed to expand efforts to allow people to cultivate psilocybin for the purpose of research. So with Schedule I drugs, that's the other limitation, is it's hard to cultivate it. It's hard to get your hands on it. The DEA regulates that. They've said, hey, we're going to loosen up. We know there's some research value here, and we're going to loosen up and let you guys produce some psilocybin mushrooms so that you can do research. Right now, I'm part of a program with the University in Oregon that is working to create a grow lab and a research lab through a university. It will be all legal and all legit and approved by the DEA. They're allowing that now. University of Memphis, Ole Miss, not University of Memphis. Ole Miss has an approval from the DEA to grow marijuana. I don't know if y'all knew that. Ole Miss grows marijuana for research purposes. And if you are interested in following the decriminalization efforts, there are groups on Facebook. It's usually decriminalize in either your state or your city. That's had like decriminalize Memphis, decriminalize Tennessee, decriminalize Mississippi. You can join and they'll keep you posted on any bills that come up, because this is something you can advocate for. You can advocate with your local voting people to vote in the way to reform these policies. Thanks. That's all I got. My name's Jessica Shea, and there were some things in the chat, but I don't know, since I got kicked out, if they're still there. Do you guys have any questions? I'm going to email Joy the link to the slideshow. I know it's a lot, but there's lots of references and stuff in there. And anybody got any questions? Yeah, there were some messages in the chat, but then they're gone now because I got kicked out. So if y'all want to retype them in the chat. Oh, thanks. Joy will post a link. And I'm going to send you, Joy, the link to these slides right now. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining me today. And if y'all have any interest, follow me on Facebook. Oh, Hannah wants to know, is there a chance for a bad trip? A bad trip is usually just exposure to an emotion that society deems negative. So I don't believe in a bad trip. It may be uncomfortable. There are sometimes times when clients face uncomfortable things, and that may, if I was at a concert and my trip involved feeling anxiety about death, I would probably consider that a bad time. But therapeutically, it's not a bad time, if that makes sense. You guys are welcome. You're welcome, Mary. Thanks. Thank y'all for coming. All right. Bye, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Don't forget about part 2, whenever that is.
March.
Okay,
Yes,
bye.
this was really interesting. Thank y'all so much. I meant to go in person, but got caught up with measurement and SPSS nonsense. But
Same. I got caught up with a client, but thanks for doing this.